You're getting oh so close to taking down that survivor pool and all the cash. We've got the best analysis in the business coming up next on Scratching and Surviving. All right, NFL Week 16. I am Statsational, former professional FX trader on Wall Street, turned pro sports bettor and pro DFS player, and of course the co-founder of the Sharp app. If you haven't checked out the Sharp app yet, please do so at sharp.app. If you use code SURVIVE35, it's going to get you 35% off a pro membership at the Sharp app. If you are looking to bet on sports, especially props, we have something called the Proptimizer. You're going to want to check out the Sharp app. So give us a look at sharp.app. We'd greatly appreciate it. Also, adding to the list of jobs I have, I'm now hosting something called the Better Thinking Podcast. We launched the first episode on Monday with Joseph Buchdahl, who is a sports betting analyst. Fascinating interview there. I've got more dropping this week, and I'm actually doing an interview here once I finish up with this show. I've got a really good one that I'm looking forward to. I have a professor coming on. You guys will hear more about it when I start dropping the clips of the show. But check it out, the podcast on Spotify, Apple, all major podcasting platforms, Amazon, or if you just subscribe here, which I know a lot of you watch every week and don't subscribe because I see the data. If you subscribe here, that's going to help, and you'll be able to look for the Better Thinking podcast. It should show up in your algorithm. But by liking these videos and going and liking some of the better podcasting clips and the podcast, that would help as well to get it into your algorithm. Or you could just subscribe to the Better Thinking playlist here on the Sharp app channel. All right, enough of the plugs. Let's dive into Week 16 and talk about what we've got going on. All right, we're getting to the point, I talked about it last week, where the spreadsheet not as valuable anymore because we've got it all laid out in front of us. Now we've got 3 weeks. We can map out the next 3 weeks. That's really the time frame I like to map out anyway. I don't like to go too much further than that typically, just because we just never know what the future may bring. You've got, take a look at Pat Mahomes getting hurt, right? So things like that will change. You wind up saving on, you save a Baltimore, and the next thing you know, Lamar Jackson is hurt, changes the entire landscape and what you were looking to do. So there are opportunities that we're going to want to save or times that we're going to want to save teams. It makes sense. But in certain situations, we just want to take the optimal. And we're at the point now where we really want to, in most pools, we want to take an optimal path to the finish line. Now, there's going to be chances in the larger pools, you guys who have 50, 60, 70, 80. Some of you have hundreds of people left in your pool. You're in massively sized pools. In those pools, perhaps you may want to take a bit of an alternative strategy, but I'd be hesitant in doing so, especially with some of the games we have coming up next. So let's dive into it, and we'll get more into the strategies and what we're looking at as we go. But right out the chute, the biggest favorite of the week, Buffalo. They host New England. We've seen how good Buffalo's looked right now. Of course, 87+% win percentage. Going to be difficult to imagine New England being able to go into Buffalo and winning that game, but nothing is absolute. As of now, we've got a 12.5% chance that New England does pull off the upset. But a lot of you have taken Buffalo already, which is why they are only being picked at a 15% pick rate this week. Now, certainly also adding to that is the fact that you've got Green Bay just about as big a favorite as Buffalo is, and they host New Orleans. Now, if you had your choice between the two and you had both available to you, you're probably going to want to take Green Bay. As a matter of fact, I would highly suggest taking Green Bay if those were your two options, because there's a good chance you do not have Philly for next week, right? So if you have Philly, let's just go through it here. If you have Philly for next week, and we have to look at next week as well, if you have Philly for next week, then you could go ahead and take Buffalo, and you're going to have a pretty good leverage on the field. Now, they're at New England in Week 18, and I've warned you guys already, especially in the AFC. The AFC may be locked up after this weekend. There's a chance, I haven't gone over all the scenarios, but there's a chance that the playoff teams are all locked up. There's a chance that perhaps seeds for some of these teams are going to be locked up as well. So I think there's a high probability Week 18 we could be seeing a lot of teams resting players, and that's going to change the dynamics quite a bit. So if you're saving a team for Week 18, don't. There's going to be a chance that you're going to have a favorite. You may have a touchdown favorite that is not even close to a touchdown favorite right now, a team that you may not have even imagined taking come week 18. So we'll see how that all plays out. So I'm really going to focus on week 16, 17. If I get to week 18, look, that's the opportunity, and you'll have no better opportunity than week 18 to be able to hedge because you have no more future weeks. If you have not hedged up to this point, you can in week 18. And you can in week 18 regardless of how many people are left in the pool, because you've got almost all of the information available to you that you can possibly have at that time. There is no more weeks. So time is a huge factor when it comes to hedging, as is the amount of people left in your pool, i.e. the equity that you have in your pool, and of course the team that you're playing and the ability that you have to maybe catch a middle on that team. And what I mean by a middle is if you were hedging with Buffalo this week and you took Buffalo, that means in the way I like to hedge, some people like to do it on the money line. I like to take New England plus 14 points so I can win with Buffalo, advance, and then maybe catch a middle if Buffalo wins by, let's say, 10 and win that bet as well. Now, the reason it's just easier to do in week 18 is because that's it. That's my final bet. I know exactly where I'm going to be financially depending on what scenarios happen. In week 16 here, if you've got 40 people left in your pool and you hedge with New England and Buffalo winds up winning the game by 30, and then you say, well, I'll have next week I've got Tampa Bay, let's say, or whatever, against Carolina. I'll hedge that game as well, and then Tampa Bay winds up winning big. You've lost 2 hedge bets, and you're cutting into your profits. In week 18, that's it. You've got 1 hedge bet. You know exactly how much money you're going to win or lose, at least at a minimum, right? So you don't know necessarily what other people's picks are going to do and what your picks are going to do, but you know there's 40 people left. At worst, let's say that equates to a $10,000 equity in your pool. At worst, you're going to be returning $10,000. So you know what that at worst number is. Makes it a lot easier to hedge. All right, so back to this week. We got Buffalo, huge favorite against New England. Green Bay, huge favorite against New Orleans. Of the two, you're going to want to take Buffalo, in my opinion, unless you have no other option for next week. And a lot of you have taken Tampa. A lot of you have taken Philly. If you happen to have Buffalo available to you, then I would strongly suggest going the Green Bay side. And that's why you're seeing the percentage low, not only because a lot of people have taken Buffalo, but because even if you have not taken Buffalo, you probably have Green Bay available to you. I would suggest taking Green Bay even with this high pick percentage, because it's going to give me a better option here for week 17. Now, there's a good chance you do not have Buffalo, so let's not get too deep into Buffalo. Atlanta is a team that a lot of people have not taken either. They're getting 22.5% of picks and pools. They're hosting the Giants. We've seen how bad the Giants have looked. 8.5-point spread. They have a 78% chance to win their game. Again, we don't know what their scenario is going to be. There's a good likelihood, though, Atlanta will need to play Week 18. High likelihood that that's going to be the case just to get into the playoffs. So that game against Carolina may actually mean something. So we'll see. If you've got options and you want to kind of hold on to Atlanta, if you've got options that are similar, I can understand that. But it's unlikely because there's a good chance you've taken Cincinnati. There's a good chance you've taken Detroit already. This may be your only option here this week outside of Green Bay. So if I had to choose between Green Bay and Atlanta, I think everything is pointing towards Green Bay for me. I mean, my order here is going to be I'll take Buffalo if I have them. I'm getting a huge amount of leverage, but I'm getting leverage actually with Green Bay as well. Let me jump over, the looking at the future weeks, obviously hugely important. As I mentioned, the spreadsheet, not nearly as important. And let me kind of close these. I did a little, that's how I add in the money line here. So, and I take a midpoint. If you saw that, it's just basically a midpoint between the two lines is what we get the money line. And I get that off of the Sharp app. I just take the best money line on both sides and we take a midpoint. Again, future value, I've got it at 0, but future value not going to weigh that heavily here. Obviously, the two biggest favorites this week, Buffalo and Green Bay, show up high. But what I want to show you is the threshold column. Look at this. They've got almost a 90% chance to win, Buffalo. The threshold, 88%. Reason being, they have a high win probability with a relatively low pick percentage, meaning if you have Buffalo, it's very difficult. It's almost impossible. Now, there is a team that's 88% better, but they're getting picked at an even higher rate. So it's going to be basically you're going to want to take Buffalo here according to the threshold. But like I said, if you had the choice between Buffalo and Green Bay, you may want to take Green Bay with the option in week 17 because you may need Buffalo next week against the Jets. But we'll talk about your individual paths down in the comments. Within like minutes of posting this video, you guys start posting comments. So I do enjoy that and going through them all. So I love going over it all with you. But you see something very similar here, almost 84% threshold here for Green Bay, meaning there's no other team that you could take outside of Buffalo and vice versa with Buffalo, with Green Bay, if you're going to fade these teams, if you have that ability to do so, right? If you don't have either one of these options, of course, it's not really a fade. You're just forced to take another team. So that is strong because of the percentages. Now, you're going to want to change this based on your pool. Now, people are going to ask me, everyone's going to have Green Bay. I'm going to get a question. I've got 6 people left in my pool. 4 of them are going to take Green Bay. We're pretty confident about that. Well, let's change the number to 67%. In this scenario, if you've got 67% of your pool taking Green Bay, and let's say nobody could take Buffalo, so they're out of the equation. Well, now you can go ahead and fade Green Bay with a team that has a 73% chance or better to win. And that would be Atlanta, Cincinnati. I'd start to get a little nervous when I got down to Detroit and Baltimore. But Cincinnati and Atlanta. Cincinnati, you may not have. Again, we talked about Atlanta. Good chance you do have Atlanta left. So in that scenario, I'm okay taking Atlanta and making that fade pick if you thought you had 70% or so of your pool going to be on Green Bay. But you see, as per Survivor Grid, 36% are taking Green Bay overall in pools. So it's an odd thing where in the shorter pool, in the smaller pool, you may actually be more apt to take a risk than you are necessarily in the larger pool. The larger pool, I don't know if you're going to get the leverage because the larger pool, we're going to see picks spread out much more. I don't know if it's as advantageous necessarily in the larger pools to really make the contrarian play. Now, it can be, of course, if there's massive upsets, we're going to pick up a ton of equity. So I'm not going to totally dismiss that theory. But I think we're at a point where we just want to we've got paths here. We've got a path to look at. We've got 3 weeks. We can really map out the next 3 weeks of who we like, week 18 aside, with the fact that obviously we don't know who may be playing and may not be playing in week 18, but we could at least give ourselves an idea. If we have Green Bay, who do we like in week 17? Let's go over it. Philly, unlikely that you have Philly left. Some of you did hold Philly for Dallas. It's going to be a big advantage, as most people will not. Most people will not have Buffalo, right? Tampa Bay, almost everyone has used. There was a couple of weeks there a few weeks ago where Tampa was a very popular pick. Indianapolis, perhaps you may have Indianapolis left, but now we're getting down. We're 4 points off. We're projecting a 10.5-point spread, maybe even be higher in that Dallas game. We'll see, but probably 10.5 sounds about right. You've got the Chargers. A lot of you have used. Miami, do we trust that? And now we're getting to games that we really don't want to have. So we've got some games that are touchdown or better favorites. If you can hold Buffalo and take Green Bay, that's why it's important here to hold on to Buffalo if you even have that option. All of you are going to have different scenarios, so it's going to be difficult for me to really cater the video specifically to you, and that's why, of course, I like you guys to comment down below with your specific pool, how many people you have left, and who you have taken or what you have left to take. But I prefer when you tell me who you guys have taken, because in that scenario, what I do is, I don't know if you guys realize this on Survivor Grid, but if you click on a team, it'll X out that team for you, and you'll be able to get a clearer picture. So if I've taken Buffalo already, I've taken Atlanta, I've taken Cincinnati, I've taken Baltimore, et cetera, it gives me an idea in future weeks when I scroll through exactly who I'm going to take. So let's say I still have Philadelphia left, but I've taken Indianapolis, I've taken the Chargers, I've taken Washington, right? So this gives me a good idea when we look at future weeks of who I can take. So that's if you didn't realize Survivor Grid did that, it does, and that will help you out. But that's why I like you guys to tell me who you have taken, and then I do that on the Survivor Grid, and then that helps me visualize what you guys have left and give you guys some advice. But we've been going strong here. 50 people left in Circa. There was 51 last week. Only one person knocked out with San Francisco. So I know I've got at least one of you guys are still alive, and I'm hoping. I don't think that person took San Francisco from what we discussed. So I'm hoping my Circa people are still alive and still shooting for that $14.2 million prize. I'd love to hear from you guys down below, my DraftKings people, and all the pools that you guys are in. All right, let's win this week. Let's get to next week. Remember, guys, the Better Thinking podcast. Be greatly appreciated if you could just give it a listen. Follow it on whatever platforms you guys use for your podcasting, or right here on YouTube, and then you get to actually watch the video of the podcast and see my face. So I don't know if that's a plus or a minus, but either way, greatly appreciate you doing that for us. And until next week, I am Statsational. This is Scratching and Surviving. Good luck, and let's take it down.